So thank you all for inviting me to participate and to present to you. First, I want to say that this is information that I gather throughout the years, and also through presentation and communication with Health Canada. So some comes from different conferences that I went, and also some from the guidance at Health Canada. So today we'll have like mainly six different sections: the Health Canada organization, the clinical trial regulation, and the timelines and mechanisms. As well, after that, on the number 3, this is the major section of the presentation, the CMC content, and with respect to CTA and applications as well, the amendments for TPD, which is the pharmaceutical directorate for small molecule, and BRDD, which directorate for the biological. Then we'll move to the Health Canada CTA performance review. I think you were interested in seeing how much time it takes, and on average, if they met their timelines. Number 5, regulatory agility in Health Canada's COVID-19 response. So what they put in place in order for the pandemic, in order to get drugs in Canada in response. And then last is the future, is clinical trial modernization. Is Health Canada is working on updating the clinical trial regulations. Okay. So this is just an overall organigram of Health Canada. The first one, the Minister of Health, is being elected by the population. So this is the only one that is elected. And under the Minister of Health, you've got the Deputy Minister of Health of Canada, whose name, and the Associate Deputy Minister of Health Canada as well, who's been now is named and appointed. So under that political branch, you have multiple the health product and food branch is divided in many different directorates. I only added a few there. It's more complex than that, but the first one here is the BRDD. They changed their name recently from BGTD to BRDD, which is I have the acronym on the next slide. I'll do it. I don't want to make any mistakes. This is for the large molecule, for, as I mentioned before, the biologics, and then you have the pharmaceutical directorate for small molecule. And MHPD stands for the Marketed Health Product Directorate. So this is mainly pharmacovigilance, the risk management plan. This is once your product is approved on the market. And HPFB Inspectorate is with respect to GMP audits, on-site evaluation, not on-site evaluation, sorry, but for the GMP and the site listing as well for your DEL. The general background of Health Canada, there's, as I mentioned, it's complex. You've got multiple directorates. It's comparable to the FDA and EMA, but not necessarily not in size. They don't have the manpower that FDA and EMA, but they have similar complexity with respect to the different division. One of their main point is that they are really risk averse. There is the safety of the patients and the population first. So that's their main motive, to make sure that what's on the market is safe for Canadian patients. And they do have complex policies. Usually they're involved also internationally. So they discuss with Europe, with the FDA and other agency. We're like also with Australia. I know there's a lot going on, and Swiss Medic. The thing is, usually it ends up often being like they take everything of all the other agency and they, so it's not the simplest, is the more complex of all. Usually they take all, and so we end up having a very, very complex policies, because they do they take a bit of all the exception of everyone. So we have a major exception. Usually in Canada, it's the more complex one most of the time. Unfortunately for us, it makes it a bit more difficult to comply to everything. The clinical trial, Health Canada used to be an observer of ICH. In the past few years, maybe 5 years and more, they're now a member of ICH, so they're fully endorsed the ICH, and the CTA. They're following the principle of ICH E6. And as I mentioned, the mandate also on clinical trial is to ensure that safety of the Canadian patients. Now to the acronym I presented, the TPD, which is these are the main two directorates that we're going to look at today. Therefore, they're looking at about safety and effectiveness, so the risk-benefit ratio for pharmaceutical drugs. It's similar to, if you know, in the US, the CDER, and for the biologics and radiopharmaceutical directorate, the RDD. This is the evolving directorate, I would say. From pharma industry, there's lots of biotechnology, the drugs, the future, the new drugs, the innovation, mainly in pharma, is in that directorate, is because you have like listed here the blood product, the monoclonal antibodies, gene therapies, CAR T, cell therapies. They are all evaluated under that division, which is similar to the CBER for the FDA. So this is more the complexity of the organigram under just TPD. So I think you had a question about how it's divided with respect, and this is for a snapshot of for the Office of Clinical Trials. So evaluating clinical trials. So you have the Submission Management Division, or it's the division with whom we interact more. They are the regulatory product manager, so making sure the project is on time. They coordinate with each of the other division, the other bureau, the other groups, to make sure that the clinical group is reviewing on time, the medical quality, and the ADR is the adverse drug reaction group. Now moving to the biologic organization, a bit different. It's not as they have one clinical trial, Office of Clinical Trial under CRESS, but and then the quality is under two separate division. I don't know, Jhon, if you for this one, do you want to add something, since you were mainly involved with the BRD?
I guess the only thing I can add, I mean, you're very accurate right now. The only thing I might add is that during this period of coronavirus, there's been a lot more flexibility in the structure of BRDD. So it used to be CERB was responsible for biologics and radiopharmaceuticals, and CBE was vaccines. now, just because of the workload for coronavirus-related submissions, there's a lot more flexibility between CERB and CBE. CERB quality reviewers can be drawn into vaccine review and vice versa, just for flexibility and to maintain Canada's timelines for approvals.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
So now we'll move to number 2, is the regulation and the mechanism in Canada. They are regulated under Division 5 of the Food and Drug Regulations. It's a fairly complex regulation. I won't go through all. It came into force in 2001, and it allowed the sale and importation of unapproved product for the purpose of going through a clinical trial. It also ruled under the good clinical practices to make sure everything is fine. And this does not cover the natural health product nor the medical devices. They're under a different set of rules. And in 2019, Health Canada issued, they just sort of summarize and organize well in a guidance how to conduct those trials in Canada. So I have added the link below. CTA, the review, the regulations, in order to be able to have like a trial in Canada, if there's insufficient information to assess the risk of your drug or the trial, it won't be approved. The use of the drug for the purposes of the clinical trial, if it endangers the health of the subject, it won't also be approved. And the clinical trial, if it's contrary to the best interest of a clinical trial subject. So you can see here or if you can't achieve your objective, the safety is first in the mandate. There was also a point about the pre-CTA meeting. If we want to meet with Health Canada, or there's a need to, depending on the type of questions or what is to inquire about. If it's something that could be answered briefly, it's better like email, phone for both TPD or BRDD. But if you have a new molecule, a complex study design, and you want to go into the discussion of the deeper in the content, it's better to have a pre-CTA meeting. It's very nice to meet with the agency, and you learn a lot throughout those discussions. So there's a guidance. There's a nice guidance. I've also added the link here in blue, and you'll add that into the presentation afterwards. Summary of what's expected in order to be ready for the meeting. You'll need to make a request upfront before by email, and it's recommended that you start 3 months in advance trying to find a date. The thing is now, I would say, even as Jhon mentioned, also with coronavirus, the COVID-19, it changes a lot. It may be leaning more towards 4 months because they're pretty busy right now. You need to propose a minimum of 4 meeting dates that the sponsor is available to meet with the agency, and a list of specific questions you want to get addressed, and you submit your package, pre-submission package, 30 days before the meeting, and that's all explained also in the guidance with the link I presented before. And with respect to BRDD, a bit different than TPD, they do provide usually a week before feedback about the questions we've listed. And just a bit of the statistics of this came from Health Canada's website. They have a report of performance, and for TPD, it goes from the blue bar, the darker blue bar is 2015, and there was 0 for that year, and we're moving towards 2019, 2020. where they had like 6 pre-CTE meetings. So for pharmaceutical, maybe because they're less complex projects, there's less meeting, but you'll see if we move to the Bureau of Biologics, they do have, they meet much more with the sponsor, with industry. It was in the mid 40s, and now it's in the low 30 meeting per year. The process, when you file your CTA and the timeline from the sponsor, from D0, when the submission is received, it goes through screening. You'll have there's multiple. The screening period is key because it's when they want to make sure that all the information that was required has been provided in order for them to start their review. Because per the regulations, there's only 30 days to review the submission. So everything needs to be there, and there's no time to be wasted. If there's some information is missing, we'll go through the other slide, but the submission goes into process hold until everything is there. And if not, then there could be, if it's significant enough, the information is significant enough missing, there will be a withdrawal or from the sponsor, or potentially a rejection. So the review won't start. But if the review it's accepted for review, usually it's around D7 of the. If it's accepted for review, then you get an acknowledgement letter with the information on your letter. We'll go through after, and then it's divided into 2 different streams: the clinical review and the quality review. They're independent, as you saw also on the previous slides with all the organigram. And under the 30, the last day or before the last day, if all goes well, then you get NOL, which stands for no objection letter. And if there are still significant issues, then you can either withdraw without prejudice to refiling, or you get a non-satisfactory notice. Now, this is just a bit more details of what we just saw. Just I was mentioning in the first 7 days, or the screening correspondence. So this is a key portion, just to assure everything is there. So BRDD, there's a bit difference. They can send a clarifax with 2-day response without stopping the clock. They're very nice for that. They have that flexibility depending on the question, on what's required, if it's not too much. And if it's, as I mentioned, if it's significant, and now the 30-day review timeline will only restart once everything is there. And this is key because, as I mentioned, it's per regulations. You have there's 30 day. After 30 days, we need to have a decision made whether it's positive or negative. So if it's as I mentioned, if it's the information won't be found, then it's just the review will not start. You'll get a rejection letter. And but if all is okay and you've passed your screening, then your submission is accepted. And then in your acknowledgement letter, usually you get it says the date it was accepted, and then within 30 days from that date, you will start you'll get the NOL or the NSN. So you know exactly what to expect in terms of when you're get the questions and so on, because the period is defined. This is during review. Once it's accepted for screening, because of its very short review time frame, Clarifaxes, they're called Clarifax by Health Canada. You have 2 days to respond, and sometimes it's even not 2 days. It could be in terms of, let's say you get your Clarifax at 4 p.m. and then they say by 9 a.m. on the, let's say usually you get it on the Friday afternoon, which changes your weekend. But you have, and then they say by Monday 9 o'clock, or if not possible, then you can ask for an extension. But it also depends, the flexibility of the review or the timelines for response also it depends how close you are to the end of the 30 days, which makes sense. And then it's the similar for if you get a quality or clinical question. And as I mentioned before, no objection letter. Sometimes BRDD, sometimes they do have comments. They add comments at the end on the approval letter, mentioning that once you have, let's say there was an amendment to the protocol, you needed to change a few things, and you say it's complex to make the changes. They say prior to initiated the study in Canada, please file a CTA notification with the revised protocol. So sometimes it's to provide a new set of specification, or more the limits. Once you know the limits, there's a commitment. It happens a few times. You have a commitment on your NOL, but at least it permits you to start your study usually. Also COVID-19 changed quite many things, and in order to help to find cures for COVID-19 for COVID-19 related trials, what they did is for non-COVID-19 related trial, Health Canada added in August 15 days to the review. So it's the interim order. It's temporary. It should end. The measure should end November 16 if it's not extended. But for that period, instead of having 30 days, as I mentioned, the review now goes to 45 days. Although so far we haven't, it doesn't last until 45 days. That's not what we see, but for sure it goes beyond the 30 days. And this is when you file. There are two major types. Like if you file a CTA amendment, these are pre-approval, but you can file a CTA notification if the change is not as significant, so that it's effective immediately and there's no approval sent by Health Canada, and sometimes not even an acknowledgement. It's just you file. So this is just different types of CTA amendment quality. If you're changing your manufacturing sites, processes, this for drug substance or drug product, it's expected like you need to file an amendment, pre-approval, a new dosage form, change in composition. For the specifications, if it's a relaxation of an acceptance criteria, or you're adding new impurities. So if you're adding impurity, even you need to file and get approval for it. And for the biologics, if your shelf life is less or equal to 18 months, you need to file an amendment. Notification, the previous one were for pre-approval. This one you can file without getting approval. So as I mentioned, manufacturing sites, usually it's a pre-approval, but there's an exception to it. If a manufacturing site for a pharmaceutical drug, so a small molecule, if it's an immediate release and you're within the same manufacturer, so it's very, very, like the risk is very minor, so that's why you can go with a notification. Adding testing site, and if you're changing your specs, but if you're tightening the specifications, it's considered minor, so you can implement immediately. And for a biologics, if your shelf life is more than 18 months, then you can proceed. And for others, for the pharmaceutical drug, you can extend once it's approved. When we're filing either a CTA application, an amendment or a notification, it's key to really highlight properly the changes and what's the goal of the submission, and to annotate and to guide the reviewer throughout the changes, so they don't have to search through all the information. Sometimes there's a tendency with the CTD to provide all even previous information without mentioning. We change just the section, but without highlighting what's new. There's only 30 days, so it's even more critical to highlight properly what's new to the reviewer. Also, your changes, they should always be supported by scientific evidence that you validated or you're tested your proposed method or site. Also, clearly identify the material that is intended to be used in the trial, and comparability of the material throughout the development should always be assessed. Another thing, Health Canada likes tables with the current and proposed to make sure that the changes, as I mentioned, that it's clearly identified what are the changes. It's well summarized, and you have a rationale explaining why you're moving with those each of these changes. And if it is already been approved let's say you're filing a new study, but you're using the same tablet or the same monoclonal antibody, then you cross-refer, but you not say no, it's been approved before, but please provide the control. You need to have the control number and the no objection letter, the date, so where the information, the CMC information, was filed, so it's clear. Because these were that you receive in during review. So I don't know if anybody has questions before the next section is the big section.
Sorry, this is Jhon. Martin, could you go back a few slides? I just would like to add one thing about CTA amendments and notifications. So I know ANVISA has recently adopted a post-change quality guidance similar to Canada's. And in Health Canada's guidance to sponsors for clinical trials, Health Canada has a very similar change guidance. It's a much simplified version of their post-approval change guidance document that just focuses on major risks, and it's very clear in showing what should be filed as an amendment or a notification, and that might be helpful to look at for ANVISA in the future. It's organized very similarly to the post-approval change guidance. Yeah. Anyways, that's all I wanted to add.
Thank you, Jhon.
Okay, so in terms of, we haven't received any additional question, so I think we can continue to the next part that will be the biggest one.
Yeah, okay.
With the requirements. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So this is module 2, module 3. Through details. I presented this one. I'll organize this section. This is for the pharmaceutical drug, and I think you wanted to see differences between phase 1 and phase 2 and phase 3. So Health Canada developed with the industry guidance for the quality sections, and they have 3 separate templates for the QoS, and they are different depending on the phases. So what I've done is, like I've highlighted in pale blue, you have what is required when you move from phase 1 to phase 2. So in phase 2, you should know a bit more. So more information about your name and proprietary name, the proprietary names and the CAS should be known as well. Sorry, and the link above is the link to those where you can find the templates. Your same thing when you're in the general properties, and I only selected the ones that are changing. So physical forms, it's expected that you know more, so you should provide details now on that, not only on solubility but also on the physical form. For the description of the manufacturing, not only the flow diagram now is required, but you should also present a narrative description of your process with some details. And for the control of material, there's information on material also that now is expected when you move to phase 2. In the characterization, this is also key to Health Canada. It's not only like for the potential polymorphic forms and for the particle size distribution of the drug substance. It's not only if you have that information, but it's expected that you're going to be providing it in those sections. Impurities also is something that keen to Health Canada. It's expected that now you know more about, you see the structure is so you need to provide the structure. And with respect to at the bottom, the bottom table, actual level of impurities, the acceptance criteria should be, it's not only report the result, the data, but also to have acceptance criteria and to report the results for the batches that you use. Moving to the drug substance specifications, in phase 2 as well, you should know more. It's not like in the development. So test and method and validation of those testing methods should be provided, as well as acceptance criteria. You may not have all the limits, but at least the one you have, and the analytical procedure. You see, it's all summarized in the table above. For the batch analysis portion, it's expected that in phase 1, it's the batches that you're going to be using in the trial, but when you're moving to phase 2, it could be representative batches as well. You don't necessarily need to have the batch that you use in the trial. And since we saw in the previous slides, you should have a set of specs, then justification of those specifications as well should be provided here. For the stability, you need to have like also a retest period for your drug substance, not just the proposed storage condition, but if there's usually there's a retest, so you can extend, you can use it after your drug substance in your manufacturing. And since we saw also in the test method before, some tests are, and on your specifications, they are specific to stability. So those, if they're not, they were not presented before in the previous section, this is where you include your analytical procedure and the validation of your test specific to stability. Moving to drug product, again, phase 1 to phase 2. It's similar to what we saw with the drug substance. Here, a qualitative list of the components for the placebo sample. If you have those, they should be included here. It's not like a major thing here, depending whether you have a placebo or not. In the pharmaceutical development, now a discussion how it evolved and why you chose those. The formulation should be included here. Description of and P33, similar to what we saw for the drug substance, a narrative also, not only flow diagram, but a narrative should be included. Again, similar to the drug substance, you know more since in your phase 2, so it's expected that, not expected, but you need to provide the specifications, tests, and the validation and the methods as much as what's available. Here it's a bit different for the batch analysis. Again, you not only have you can't provide representative batches, so CLVs and the results of representative batches. However, for a CTA, phase 1, phase 2 pharmaceutical, prior to using a batch a lot in Canada in a trial, you need to file with Health Canada that certificate of analysis. So you need to provide that in a CTA notification. It's not a pre-approval, but if you haven't provided the batches that are going to be used in the trial for phase 2, you do need to provide it separately in a notification. The justification of the specification as well, similar to the drug substance. Since you have those specs now, it's expected that there's a discussion explaining why you chose those limits. For stability, similar representative batches, and again, as in the drug substance, if you haven't provided the validation and analytical procedure because they are specific to the stability, then they go here. To phase 2 to phase 3, there's less information here because the major change was from phase 1 to phase 2. Phase 3, and of course, what you've provided for phase 2, it's a carryover. You need to also capture it for phase 3. But now it's not only sufficient to have a narrative, but now they want to have details. So if you have the types of equipment, temperature, speed, so on, like they're looking for, Health Canada is looking for that type of information. Also, critical control of steps, you need to include that information over here in 2.4. This is just the summary of the results. You cannot present it for representative batch as well. In the manufacturing process of the drug product, again, similar to the drug substance, what we've seen, the flow diagram, under the flow diagram, the detailed narrative. So I think here, equipment type, working capacity, the parameters. You'll get questions if you haven't provided enough details there. And again, control of your critical steps, it's expected to be provided. Again, and then question. This is for the pharma. Then after that, we'll move to the BRDD portion. I don't know if you had questions.
Yes, there was one question coming in to Jhon. So it's regarding the guideline that you mentioned for post-approval changes for CTA. So if that could be possible to send us the name, the reference to these guidelines. So ANVISA would like to know better about the guideline from Health Canada.
Yeah, of course. I can send a link to you, Heloisa, and you can share with ANVISA.
Okay, thank you, Jhon.
Yeah, no problem.
Any other question from the chat box? I don't see other questions, but along the way, ANVISA team and also for the companies, if you want to ask something, you put on the chat box and we will do the questions and answers in the next questions and answers break. Okay? Thank you. We can continue.
Okay, thank you. So the biological portion of it, and this is also it's set up a bit differently, similar to what TPD as well wants. It's like, of course, more you have information and the development, so from phase 1 to phase 3 to your drug, it's expected that you provide it. Although with the biologic, they don't have 3 separate templates. It's one template, and in the comments it says there's a reference whether, like, for a phase, what's expected for each phase if the information is available. But that comes mainly from presentation where you have from the RDD questions, clarifaxes, question that information that's often missing from or not precise enough in the industry submission. So flow diagram with, again, similar to the other one, in process control, relevant steps, scale, the acceptance criteria of your IPC, and the data to demonstrate that your master cell bank or working cell bank, they've been well characterized and qualified. In the manufacturer as well, demonstrate that your raw material with impurities, that is well controlled, that you have limits, the non-biological origin, if available, and for biological origin, like everything to TSC, B.Sc, you need to provide source and as well as evidence to how you can ensure that, like, the material you're using is safe to patients. So this is a summary, like a table, an example of a table that could be all the information could be presented in a submission, and what's the level of details that is expected. Characterization, this is key, especially in the BRDD drug substance lot. Using the characterization study, clearly identify those lots and the extent of characterization, as I mentioned, from depending where you are in the development of the life cycle of your drug. So provide a list of process-related impurities, evidence that the impurities are not at risk to the participant. Often we'll see it later, but link to the patient weight and the max dose as well. Residual solvent. Also, depending if there's chronic exposure, depending on the type of drugs and the disease, if it's like a medication that you take on a daily basis or just once, it changes, and appropriate data to justify its use with the final level in the clinical lots. You should be providing that. And so I forgot to mention, you see below, there's also reference to, as I mentioned before, we're Health Canada. Canada is member of ICH, and the different section of the ICH guidance where it refers to related to, they are indicated at the bottom on the slides. And this is also all into Health Canada QoS guidance and quality guidance. You have a fairly extensive guidance. It's all there, all their references. Again, characterization. This is a question often sent about insulin, residual insulin, and the acute exposure. There's I'm not a specialist on that, but there's a reference I wanted to share that there's a reference that Health Canada provides, literature reference on which they base themselves to make those the calculations. So they want, again, this is also on the maximum dose the patient's going to get, and the patient weight and so on. This is key to assess. Process-related impurities, product derivative variants during the manufacturing, they should be well characterized as well. And level, like how much you found in the different batches should be also reported. Comparability of the tox and the clinical lots should be demonstrated, especially like if you have like in a bridging study, if your formulation changes over time. The drug substance lot associated manufacturing process, scale, and formulation, also all of these details, they should be well clearly identified. And your comparability studies, if you do have one, it should include analysis of your batch analysis, the characterization of, make sure it's the same product, and the stability studies as well to make sure it's stable over time. It doesn't change. The changes you made doesn't change. As in negatively, sorry, I should say negatively impacted your drug. These are some sections that are relevant to both the drug substance and the drug product. And a small illustration to show that, like phase 1, you have like usually wider sets of limits because it's early development, and the more you know, the more you can, and the more you are controlled with your manufacturing method for both either drug substance and drug product. So you're evolving towards phase 3, then your limits are expected to be tighter. And also, as I mentioned before, justification of the specs. You should consider your maximum dose of the product, and whether it's recurrent or it's just a short term, and then the worst case dose and the patient body weight as well. Take that into consideration when you're calculating and you're setting up your specifications. So common issues reported by Health Canada with respect to specs, the impurities not being adequately controlled, so not tight enough not tight enough, and a wide range for critical quality attributes such as protein concentration. This is mainly how Health Canada, like what could help to how to present for both. The above table is drug substance, the bottom one is drug product. So kind of information that it helps Health Canada when during review that they could be provided to ease the review. the reference standard for both the drug substance drug product. It should be identified, and to see whether also it was the same. Are we using the same reference standard for the drug substance and the drug product, and how it was characterized, the results, and it needs to be, if it evolves, it needs to be representative of what is being used in the clinical trial, because often when you're in CTA, you're changing the formulation, or you're moving. It's the development being going on. So you want to make sure, Health Canada wants to ensure that what's being provided before still stands, and if it has changes, that it's still representative of what is being used in the patient. Also provide, now we're moving to stability for both drug substance drug product. The container closure system to provide enough information for both, not only for the drug product. Often there's more information on drug product, but also for the drug substance, and the shelf life, not to go beyond 2 times the data, and that up to once the first time up to 12 months. And the other one I already mentioned about the fact that for biological, you need to have at least 18 months approved prior to moving just with a notification. When you're filing, clearly stating the changes, that's things that helps because of only the short period, the 30-day. So identifying what is release versus stability specs, what are having the stability acceptance criteria in the summary table, so they don't have to go back to the specifications portion of the submission, and present the stability to allow for a comparison over time and across lots. So they can have like a trend, can look through a trend and tendency of the molecule. So in the drug product development compatibility studies, it should support the administration condition, like again, the link to what is being studied and what's the chemistry package, make sure it supports it. And we should also demonstrate the product quality and safety, that throughout the preparation and administration, that there's no change over time. Manufacturing process, similar to what we saw before in process control, the sites, one presentation of one batch, and then it's good up to a nominal difference of less than or equal to 20% of the proposed batch, so you're within that range. In process control for bioburden, also the filter integrity, those should be, it's expected that they're in place. And if you have a novel excipient, it should be clearly indicated, and you should explain why you feel confident that it can be used, and the relevant of safety information you have about that novel excipient. Product, some control of some additional impurities, the endotoxin, subvisible particulates. Sometimes this is also missing. And also another question that often is sent is about bacterial endotoxin and the limits to be set according to how the drug is administered, or also with if there's a diluent and the reconstitution, to make sure that with the patient body weight and the length of injection over time, that all that is considered. So whether, like, you've got different limits depending if you're intravenously, intrathecally, or intravitreal administration. And stability, if that's it. If you need to have a reconstitution, or you need to prepare in the clinic before injecting, and they prepare a few bags, let's say IV bags, and they leave it for the day, let's say for 6 or 8 hours. You need to have actual shelf life that shows that you can leave your bags for 8 hours, and the product will still remain, will meet the specifications at the end prior to be injected to the patient. So real life data is important. Adventitious agent, the virus-like particle. This is in A2. Often also portion where the sponsor is not providing as much as it should be, as much information. So method used for the quantification of the virus-like particles, yield of the purification process, also going to the worst case conditions of viral clearance, making sure your calculated took that into consideration. And because it's like, let's say from phase 1 to phase 3, the scale or the lots are not as big. Let's say at the beginning they're small scale. So if you have that on your small scale to demonstrate that in the big and the larger, when you're moving to larger scale towards phase 3, that it's still representative of what you found. Comparator placebo, this is quick. If comparator, if it's already approved, there are different ways of cross-referencing or providing some of the information if you do have information of your comparator drugs, but it's expected that some information is provided, and placebo as well. And for the diluent, one of the key things is to make sure that what are negative interaction between the diluent you've selected and the drug product and your drug product. Pharmacy manual, also something that depending on the complexity of your drug and if it needs reconstitution and so on, and if they feel that in the investigator's brochure or the protocol there's not enough information, you might get a request for the pharmacy manual, but you don't need to be providing it upfront. And then there's a list of information that the quality reviewer is looking for. In use, shelf life, is there aseptic technique that we need to be doing during the presentation, clear dose preparation, the proposed administration component, and so on. These are the things that they're looking for in the manual. And again, it's just a quick link to the clinic. The clinical part is just to make sure that your quality overall summary and your module 3, module 2, it's representative of what's being used in your proposed trial. That with respect to they are going to be looking at, if you've looked at your population, the population you're studying, is it reflected, body weight, and the dose you're going to be given. Question for that portion?
Yes, we have one question. So the question is regarding the impurities. Okay, so the question is, does Health Canada review investigational product impurity according to ICH guideline Q3A and Q3B?
Yeah, I think I've come with me, but
sure.
I have you?
Oh, I think you might have passed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so
this is
I think yeah. The bottom line is Health Canada does consider ICH Q3 during clinical trial reviews. There are a lot of impurities that over time they've gained experience with, and they've seen issues arising. I think Martin had an example of residual insulin, which is often used as a growth factor in biologics. And I can't remember any specific examples, but Health Canada takes a close look at that because in the past they've just seen times where insulin wasn't adequately removed from clinical trial products, and it has resulted in an issue. So now they take a very close look at that impurity, and it's just through experience that their red lines have been drawn out. But yeah, the bottom line is ICH Q3 is considered during clinical trial reviews.
Okay, great. I think that responds to the question. Thank you. And then the link to just to mention the link to the guideline from Health Canada for the post-approval changes, we will add that also to the slide on the presentation, but it was already shared with ANVISA here through the chat box. Okay. Okay, I think we, let me just see if we received any new question, but feel free, I will just say em português, nós estamos caminhando para a nossa última parte, e aí também teremos uma sessão de perguntas no final, tá? We are reaching to our last part of the presentation, but we will have a final questions and answer at the end, okay? So let's continue, please. Thank you.
So now moving a bit to the Health Canada CT, the performance review. I think you were interested in looking at the review timelines. This is just a presentation, but Canada, this is some statistics that it covers approximately 4% of the global clinical trials. However, it's usually number 2, 3. This is also speaking for mainly innovative companies that globally it's one of the first sites to go to because of the short timelines for CTAs, and there's an environment is well set up. It's known to be estimated to be about 5,000 trials at any time in Canada, so there's quite a few protocol ongoing at the same time, and of those 1,000 mainly on clinical trials that they're recruiting, and those on oncology trial actively recruiting each year. Clinical trial, if Canada is a fairly large country, but mainly Ontario, Quebec in the central part, and Alberta and British Columbia in the western part, that's where the bulk of the trials are conducted. And one statistics also is that most of the new drug submissions, so once you get to the market, most of those already had like a trial being approved in Canada, included in their submission. The pharmaceutical side, the TPD. I'll highlight maybe, you'll see this is the year 2020. Over time, it's fairly stable. This is the total number of CTA, so it's the initial protocol. I have excluded, this is also all public information from Health Canada. They have their performance reports, but I've excluded the phase 1 bio, which are 7-day review, but this is mainly for a generic, so it's like a quick LT subject and LT volunteer comparative drugs, so it's not necessarily relevant to what we're looking for. So those statistics, it's of which 180, like for phase 2, phase 3 are the main portion of it. Here I have highlighted, sorry, in yellow, the performance. So I mentioned, if we don't account for the 40-day timeline because of the COVID-19, usually it's 30-day target, and for pharmaceutical, and you see they're meeting their target. It's by the regulation, and then the average day is 26. So they are even shorter than the 30 days, and the median is 27. Performance. This is the CTAA. So also needed to be pre-approved. This is the amendment, and you'll see here it's double the number. It's 11, like almost 1,200. So almost double of the CTA in terms of amendments. So modification of protocols, also major CMC submissions, mainly impacting phase 3, phase 2, way less for phase 1 for that matter. And here it's interesting. It also contains the quality, and you were interested in statistics. Quality, the clinical amendment, it may go close to 30 days. So even if it's an amendment, but for CMC, I should say, like especially Bureau of Biologics, they often review within 14, 20 days. So they take a much shorter time frame. They don't take, when it's an amendment, it's very rare that you go close to 30 days. It's more 10 to 14 days, the review of your quality amendment. So that's why it brings it's even lower than for a CTA, where 23 days and 24 days in statistics. Now moving to, speaking of which, BRDD, there's a bit less of trials, although they're usually more complex, 350 trials, and mainly phase 3. Again, similar results in terms of performance, 26, 28 days. This is for the first time CTA, first time filing. So that's what the reported throughout, and fairly consistent throughout the years. This is for the amendments, and now you see we add how many? 350. It's 3 times the amount of amendments. So there's a fair good amount of amendments, and both, again, phase 3, phase 2, as you see, are the bulk of the amendments. And again, 23, 25 days, so much shorter review timeline than the CTA, and also the expected 30 days. So now moving towards what was put in place in order to respond to the COVID-19 crisis and pandemic. So as a bit mentioned before, Health Canada issued an interim order in order to increase the flexibility towards the if you were to conduct try to find a cure or a solution to COVID-19 related trials, they allowed for a wider range of health professionals. Before was more restricted, so they opened it to nurse practitioner and also if you're for medical devices as well, they did the same, not only for drugs but for devices as well. They did. They reduce also the burden with respect to labeling, record keeping, if it's a drug that was already approved on the market. So it's a drug that has a different indication, but you think it could also be suitable for COVID-19 purposes, then the burden is alleviated. So it's easier and you save time. Also, they enable that if you have multiple streams in your trial, because you're trying everything in order to save time. If you stop one, you don't have to refile the full thing. You can close one and then continue with your trial. And also, they were flexible in terms of the interaction with the patient, because of all the problematic of contamination with COVID-19 and the risk of contamination between the health professional and the patient. So if remote, they allow the use of electronic and different virtual meetings. So if possible, when it was possible for the trial, in order to reduce the risk and to allow participants from remote location as well. I have at the bottom, this is the link where it's and you'll find the interim order and the measure and the announcement and what the Health Canada is working on in order to accelerate the process to find cure for COVID-19. And it changes. Usually the link stays good, but they would this was in May, first issuance, but they keep updating it frequently based on the requirements. As we mentioned that a bit before, Health Canada, sorry, they needed to prioritize, I think as everybody, the clinical trial application for COVID-19. So COVID-19, in order to find a cure, those were given a reduced timeline. So to be reviewed, instead of the 30 days, around to 14 days. And this is also as such why we saw that the 30 days, they added like a fifth, or they didn't say that, but I think it's also to encounter, because there was a bulk of trial being filed in Canada. They wanted to it was putting pressure on the non-COVID-19 related trials, which were also important. But so they felt that for an interim period of time until like mid-November, they would extend from 15 days to 30 to 45 days. Also, it's known that the REB in the country will also prioritizing. Everything was priority, basically everything. Almost everybody dropped things to make sure that COVID-19, if there was something that could be done for COVID-19 or against, would be done. When we're submitting, it was CTA, but when you're submitting the amendment, it's expected that, like, even though there's an interim order, the same filing requirements under Division 5 that we saw, they do apply, even though it's COVID-19 related. One thing that changed, the threshold for amendment notification, if you meet requirements for a notification, there's no need to file the notification in order to save time. You can just, like, the sponsor keep the records on their premises, and they don't need to file that notification with Health Canada. They can just implement it in order to save time. as I mentioned, this is just an illustration. This is a copy paste of the text we received on our acknowledgement letter, the acknowledgement letter, and it said starting August 13, that now it's no longer 30 days. I've highlighted in bold here. They put 45 days, but hopefully this should end in a few days. And I have also added a link explaining that the issuance of that that extension of the 30-day review. I think you were also interested in in terms of CMC, what was done to help and flexibility, and for BRDD, the biologics, we need, before using a lot in clinical trial, we need to file a fax back form, which is in the fax back form, you'll have like your clinical trial number, the drug substance specification, the drug substance lot listed there, used to manufacture, and when was it expired with the drug product, lot number as well, and a few information, and you sign on the fact that the specification of your product were met. Basically, that's a quick summary. That takes time. You fax that to Health Canada. It takes 7 to 10 days to be approved and get it back to you if it's not rushed. And so they just remove that requirement if you meet certain criteria. So when your biological drug do not contain human-derived excipient, and then when also if you meet your specification, then you don't have to file that form. You keep the information in-house, but you don't have to file that form. And it was that text also was, I think, was included on our no objection. There's a link. No, sorry. This is it came through a link and through a communication when we started to fax those, and they say no, you no longer have to fax it. It was implemented quite rapidly in the midst of the summer. So now moving, that's the last portion of the presentation, clinical trial modernization. Sorry about that. Modernization. That was already started prior to the COVID-19 situation, but was kind of put into pause. But now I think it will be look at a different mindset because of things that needed to be initiated in a rush. So maybe some of that will be used in that project. This is a project from Health Canada that they're consulting industry. So one of the challenges in the clinical trial environment is like the innovation. As I mentioned a bit in the BRDD, there's new like the CAR-T, the gene therapy. There even we've even learned that some are printing organs, and there are so many new things going on. So the regulation were not written in that sense. So we need, like Health Canada, we'll need to look at the more flexible regulation, and also looking at it maybe differently during the life cycle of the trial, because also I know for oncology drugs, it's fairly complex trials, and then you try cocktails, and if it doesn't work, and then you move to another one. So also that needs to be taken into consideration, the new ways of being innovative and studying drugs. I mentioned that the technology also, as would be nice to be with you in Sao Paulo, but like it's now it's with the situation where we can exchange, though with at least we can communicate through virtual, through to the computer, through camera. So also this is I think it's going to be that technology, and not only like the virtual with the camera, but also I don't have one, but like the Fitbit watches. If you're doing cardiology, cardiac trial, so you have on time information about your patient. So all these things also are changing the way of studying drugs. So they'll be taking into consideration that they're looking at global nature of the trial as well, international collaboration, and to make sure that what's being also reported by different stakeholders is that to Health Canada, that if like EMA or FDA, if other agencies they started and they look at something, it would be nice if Canada would follow the same and not reinvent the wheel or add too many specificities, so we remain competitive and agile for trial, and yeah, new approaches are for those challenges will be needed. This a bit more or less for there's a push, yeah, for agile regulation. It's all, as I mentioned, it changed the way we look at, or Health Canada as well look at things because of the COVID-19. So there were consultation, but now what's going on is there will be a consultation with industry with respect to what's been implemented. There are a few things that were alleviated that were not considered crucial or necessary or for the trial. So could those things that we put aside during COVID-19 temporarily, can we keep them long term or modify slightly and still have like safe trials and be more again more agile and more so yeah, the interim order, and there's also guidance. It was very nice. Health Canada, this is a link here, hidden in there, like what I've underlined. This is and with that you have the modification, how the modification that you can perform, because it was understood. It's not necessarily linked to the CMC, but because of the COVID-19, informed consent form, patient, yeah, consent, things like that. Maybe because it's on oncology product for patients because of risk of contamination, maybe needed to be done virtually. So it was allowed to be done as such. And if you had deviation, obviously because of last minute changes due to COVID-19, they show you all like you need to report and to document properly. So it's nicely explained there. So COVID-19, the interim order, some key concept, the risk-based approach. They move also to Health Canada to terms and condition for authorizing drugs and devices. And this is a bit of mind shift from no objection to authorization, no objection to authorization, and broadening who can sponsor. That we saw that was related to COVID-19 related trial, but not only like some specific like a small portion of people who could do trial, but a broader audience. And also that wasn't before, but the ability to like needed, if safety was at risk, then the ability to suspend or cancel part of a trial. Some flexibility, as I mentioned again, this is just a summary, alternate means of informed consent, and lesson learned. I think we're still learning, but I think that will be a great opportunity. It's unfortunate that that pandemic, but it will be a great opportunity to improve our working. So some of the key takeaway to enabling more flexible risk-based regulation, go more maybe from instead of being siloed in terms of it's a pharma, it's a bio. Health Canada is looking at having a risk-based look. Is your drug? What's the risk level of your drug, and what's the population targeted? So to have a better evolution during the life cycle of your development. And consideration continues to how the revised framework can reflect this evolving health product environment. So we'll looking forward to implementing the key learnings from COVID-19. So question, this is my last portion.
Okay, thank you. So yes, we have 2 questions. The first question is related to acceptance criteria. So the question is, what would be the ideal general acceptance criteria for quality parameters adopted by Health Canada? An example, so the average of clinical lot quality testing results plus minus 2 standard deviations. Is there something that you can elaborate on this, or there is no general acceptance criteria for quality testing?
That I want, because I'm not Health Canada, and I will just defer to guidance, or I don't know if Jhon is in his recent. I'm sorry, Jhon, to put you on the spot.
Oh, no, it's okay. I actually think that maybe one of your slides had something I can refer to. Let me just see here. It is slide 53.
Okay.
So this is a complicated question. Health Canada, and I'm just speaking on, these opinions are my own. I'm no longer at Health Canada. I can't speak for Health Canada. But Health Canada has always used a stepwise approach to setting specifications. At first, when you're in your phase 1 and phase 2, clinical trials, you have very minimal product quality experience, and so the Health Canada is willing to accept much broader specifications, and that's what's shown here in Martin's slide. The circle represents the specification, and what you're willing to accept is much more broad and reflects what you see in your non-clinical trials. And then as you move forward into your phase 2 and phase 3 trials, the expectation is that you are narrowing your specifications because you're building more product quality experience. You understand your process better. You know what the limits of your impurities are and how well your process can eliminate the impurities. Your phase 3 trial, you should be getting very close to what your specifications will look like when you file your new drug submission or your BLA or NDA equivalent. Mm-hmm. I hope that answers your question. It's a sliding scale.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We see. So there is no like a common
no. You do need to justify your
Mm-hmm.
specifications, though.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And there is another question talking about the marketing application filing, right? So regardless if it's a small molecule drug, a synthetic drug, or it's a biological drug. a biological product. So will this quality data package that was provided during the CTA review going to be reviewed again for the marketing authorization at the Health Canada?
Yes, if you, of course, it helps if, and also Jhon being involved before. But the thing is, when you file with Health Canada your submission, if you file CTAs and they've seen the molecule and they've reviewed, they know more about the complexity of your project and so on. But when you file a new drug, like when you go to market, you have a certain set of criteria that you need to meet, and you need to provide all this information. So I would say it's mainly the level of knowledge within Health Canada, because it's not the first time they've seen it if you file and they've reviewed it. So that definitely helps you, but and helps them also understand it and ask more specific questions or related to where you're going. But yeah, it's not a free pass. You need to refile.
I totally agree. Once you move from clinical trials to new drug submission, you're providing, marketing authorization. You're giving the company the opportunity to reach a much broader patient population, and so you do want to make sure that all the, I guess the English saying is all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed, and so you do go through a full review during your marketing authorization.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any other question the other teams would like to give live? Because on the chat box, I think this is it. The questions we already responded, but we can make the microphone open for this last. We have 15 minutes to end the session. Okay, maybe we don't have further questions. I think we should just go to the closing remarks, right? So I don't know who would like to hold this, or if you allow me to do it.
Yes. I just want to thank you also. I've been like obrigado and bom dia.
I'll just say thanks, Martin. You had a great presentation. My Portuguese is non-existent, so I'll just say thank you for the opportunity for being here. And yeah, if you have any questions in the future, we can always respond by email.
Sure. There was, in fact, just to acknowledge that we received some questions last Friday from ANVISA, and we are going to translate to English and send it to you to you both, of course, through this ongoing support for us to be able to respond to ANVISA in writing. Okay, but this was not possible to change the presentation or to add the questions, but we are going to do now in this week. Okay. I think maybe I can speak in Portuguese right now. Eu acho que todos têm, o Dr. Cláudio Zan agora está com o microfone aberto, caso queira fazer algum comentário de fechamento, fica à vontade, Cláudio Zan, por favor. Ou Solange também fazer algum comentário final. Acho que foi bem produtivo esse tempo, e a apresentação vai estar disponível para todos. Nós vamos encaminhar para a ANVISA a apresentação completa, conforme foi dividido aqui, e mais as perguntas respondidas daquele do e-mail que vocês encaminharam para a Interpharma.
Ok, Camila. Bom dia a todos. Eu tive um probleminha de conexão no início, eu tive que acompanhar aqui pelo celular. Mas eu acho que foi uma belíssima apresentação, acho que uma discussão muito produtiva. Nós temos um trabalho bastante árduo aí pela frente, né? Mas eu acho que o melhor de tudo é que a gente sabe que nós temos uma grande oportunidade de melhoria, né, dos nossos regulamentos. Então, eu acho que isso que importa, a gente está trabalhando duro para isso. Eu agradeço mais uma vez a todo o empenho de vocês, Camila e todos os demais membros do time, da comissão de pesquisa clínica, né? Agradeço também a Interpharma, em nome da Solange, né? Então, até aqui tem sido muito, muito produtivo todas as apresentações e seguramente serão também as próximas, né? Então, muito obrigado. I'd like to thank a lot Interpharma, Camila, and the other members of clinical trials for providing us with this opportunity to discuss this topic. I would like to thank so much the speaker, Jhon and Martin, for sharing with our team their experience on CMC review by the Health Canada. Even during this pandemic situation that it's so difficult for all of us. But it was a brilliant presentation. It will certainly help us a lot to make a new regulation. So again, I thank everyone who participated in this important discussion this morning. Thank you so much.